Welcome to Let's Get Creative with Sam, the podcast. I'm Sam Rawlings and I'm a children's creative counsellor. That means I help kids unlock their imaginations and explore the amazing world of creativity. But being creative can also be a great way to take care of our minds and feelings, which is super important. In this podcast, we'll be doing all sorts of fun things. We'll be sharing creative tips and tricks that can help us feel good, interviewing other awesome creative folks in the industry who use creativity for mental well-being, and maybe even doing some creative challenges together that can help us express ourselves. So buckle up, get ready to unleash your creativity and explore how it can help us feel our best, and let's have some fun. Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Let's Get Creative with Sam. I'm Sam Rawlings and I'm a children's creative counsellor, and this is my podcast, and I love talking to people, so why not have a podcast where I can speak to so many amazing people. Today my guest is a very wonderful lady. We've been trying to arrange this for quite a while, and you know what? Life gets in the way, and that certainly has for both of us. So I want to introduce to you Dr. Jenny Turner. Hello, Jenny.
Hi, Sam. Lovely to finally be here. You're so right. Life has really got in the way for both of us, hasn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think because of school holidays as well, it just takes over, doesn't it? And then, you know, we've gone another month and we've gone another month, and we just... we never get to that stage of where we want to do it, do we really?
Oh, and for me, it wasn't like not wanting to do it. It's absolutely wanting to do it. And then just feeling like all of these things out of my control, whether I got sick or my son got sick or it was holidays or, you know, something with work came up or, you know, some sort of crisis. And yeah, life just got really busy. It was mostly, I think, sickness. You know, I'm in perimenopause, so my immune system's taking a real hit at the moment. And my son is 5. So when he gets a bug from school, I get the bug from school, and then it takes me 2 weeks to recover. So that's been a massive challenge, I think. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. And children like recover so quickly, don't they?
Yeah,
but especially like you said, yeah, it can take us longer. I've noticed that if I bump and bruise myself, which is quite regular,
yeah,
where's this bruise come from? But then it takes so long to heal because of like my age. So and getting a sickness, absolutely.
Everything gets harder in midlife, doesn't it?
Yeah, certainly
typically
does.
Anyway.
Yeah, definitely. But we're here now.
Exciting.
And I'm so excited to talk to you today and find out more about you. So would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, certainly. So I'm Dr. Jenny Turner. I'm a clinical psychologist, which means I have a doctorate in clinical psychology. I have a background in the NHS of working with children and families in CAMS and in paediatrics. And now, for the last 6 years, I have my own private practice where I work specifically with women, with mums in relation to their motherhood journey, any maternal mental health worries they may have. And also, I've my specialty recently, since entering this phase myself, in supporting women in midlife. Through perimenopause, through the uncertainty, everything that gets thrown up at this time. What I've really found is that for both of those specialties, the motherhood and the midlife specialty, there's so much that overlaps for women during these transitions, because they are transitions. They're like a new chapter in our life. And new chapters always come with uncertainty, with change. It can be really disruptive. And I think particularly for women in this patriarchal society within which we live, these are transitions that also come with a huge amount of shame, really, you know, rather than these being transitions that are celebrated for all that they bring. They tend to be sort of motherhood, for example, can only be talked about in terms of joy and things that go well and isn't it wonderful, when actually the reality for so many mothers is this is an anxious time. It's a really vulnerable time. There's a lot of, more mental overwhelm than ever before. There's a lot more burnout. There's a lot more guilt and shame, and rage can come through for mothers. And I provide a service where mothers can bring all of that and build some resilience around that shame that society tells us we shouldn't feel all of that. I really feel strongly that all of that is really important for us to feel if we're going to develop into our full, whole selves in motherhood, and bring all this richness and complexity, and also support our children with all of their messy, complex feelings. Like, there's so much pressure on mothers to do that these days. And I think what's missing from that story is that if we are not being supported with our messy, complex feelings, then supporting our kids with that is infinitely harder, or nearly impossible. And then I think the same thing happens in midlife, where this is a developmental transition. There is lots to be gained for us going through this developmental transition. A lot more, and this is really relevant to our conversation, a lot more creativity is possible, as we get to know ourselves more in midlife. It's a real opportunity to sort of reconnect with what makes us, like what makes our soul sing and things like that. But in our society, that's made really hard by the negative narratives around midlife and aging and perimenopause and menopause. And so again, a lot of shame can come up, and a lot of rage at this stage of life for having held this mental load for so long, for having cared for so many other people for so long, and feeling a real pull to care for ourselves finally at this stage of life, but it just doesn't feel possible often. So yeah, that's a sort of summary of the type of work that I do. And I offer one-to-one therapy around these themes, both online with clients across the whole of the UK. And I also have a consulting room in Ripon in North Yorkshire, where I can see people face to face.
Thank you so much. That's just so wonderful, just hearing the support that you offer, and how it connects to you yourself. And if I think back, when you're talking about being a mum, I mean, my daughters are in the 30s now, but as a young mum, I didn't know any of this, and I come across this quite a lot with clients, with the parents, that they don't have the answers, so they come to us, don't they, for the answers, especially either for themselves or for their children.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think a lot of the messages in society put a lot of pressure on mums to be perfect mums, but at the same time disconnect us from any intuition or instinct we might have around that. And I think a huge part of the therapy that I offer is just reconnecting women with their own intuition and reconnecting them with their own emotions, because our emotions are so powerful for us to guide us towards our best, healthiest self, and towards our most contented self, and towards our most capable and competent self, especially in the realm of parenting, which is all about relationships. If we have a good relationship with ourselves, an accepting relationship of all of our messy feelings, then we're far more able to meet our children and just instinctively know more often. I don't think any of us have this perfect maternal instinct that people talk about, like we know everything all the time. That is a myth, and it's a really unhelpful shaming myth for women. But at the same time, I think we can have more connection with our instinct that can guide us to take the next few best steps in parenting. And so that's a big part of what I do, is just like, rather than the parenting advice, it's more, well, let's reconnect you with what you know about yourself and your child and about that relationship, and then we'll experiment together with what, I can support you with trying things out with your child and what works and what doesn't work for you.
That is so wonderful. And intuition, like you say, it feels like it has been lost. And I mean, I'm all for empowering parents, and we're similar in some ways, aren't we? You're a psychologist, I'm a counsellor, so we're both therapists, in our own way, in our own approach. And I'm all for empowering parents. And I think sometimes when they have that conversation with me and they're seeking that support, and especially for families where there is that neurodivergence that's present, whether they've had an assessment, you know, whether they've got a diagnosis or whether they're questioning it. When they're seeking support from me, they're also seeking support around neurodivergence as well. And it's like, so if they have an assessment, and I'm not taking this away from any family because it's their own choice, whether they go down the assessment route or they decide not to, because it can be seen as a label as well sometimes, can't it?
Absolutely.
But I feel that giving the power back to parents is so important. So for an example, like one particular family, and keeping them anonymous, they were again reaching out to me and they were questioning whether they need that assessment. And then they realised and they went, oh, actually, it is about us. And when I heard that, I was like, my heart just filled up, and I was just like, thought, well, that's such, you know, I've given you that power back. I've helped you understand yourselves as parents, that actually you're the ones that help your child, because if you're able to help your child, you're able to help yourself as well. And it becomes this real kind of strong family connection.
I agree. Yeah,
you know,
I mean,
those are those moments, aren't there?
Yeah, you're really speaking to so much of my time in CAMS and pediatrics, where the referred client is the child, but I would always find it more powerful for long-term change. And not always, let me take that back, it's not always, but in a lot of cases, long-term change could be more possible by working with the parents, both as like a co-therapist to sort of be like, well, I can see you for an hour a week and then you a child, so you can take all of this knowledge and be with them 24 hours a day, versus me seeing them for 1 hour a week. But also in terms of supporting the parents in their own right. And this can, sometimes it can feel, and again, I think the narrative gets hijacked really unhelpfully around, well, if you're offering support to parents and you're blaming parents. And that's absolutely not what we're saying, is it? What we're saying is parents feel really disempowered. Parents feel like they don't know what to do, and they are bombarded by all this noisy information and advice, and they cannot make sense of it. It's overwhelming, and they're busy, and they're juggling work and caring for the, you know, an older generation as well as their children, and it's just overwhelming, isn't it? And I think that when we offer that compassionate support to parents in their own right, then we empower those parents to sift through the noise, to come back to their heart and soul and their instincts, and find competence there, and you know, and a belief that I can manage this, you know, and I do know my child better than anyone. And then that opens up so many creative solutions in families, and as you say, creates that really strong family unit. Yeah,
Definitely. Absolutely. And I just feel that life has just got too hectic and too chaotic.
Yeah.
And that kind of brings me to education is a big thing at the moment, and it's huge. I mean, it's in the media all the time, you know, it's through government, politics, it's just so big. And again, that takes that power away from parents, and they should be able to have their own choices. So if they feel that that kind of education isn't right for their child, then taking them out and home educating for them. If they're able to manage that, I know that not all families can and things, but if they're able to manage that, then they should. I feel in some ways, and I'm not getting on my soapbox, but I just feel that in some ways that parents should have choices as well. We encourage children to have choices, don't we?
Well, I think kids get really mixed messages about whether they can have choices at the moment. Absolutely. I think there's a real difference at the moment. It's becoming bigger. This gap is becoming bigger between the parenting advice that is saying, give your children choice, respect their decisions, give them autonomy, give them control. But then at the same time, we're still sending them into a school system that is not celebrating giving kids control or choice or autonomy. So I think kids are getting a really mixed message about that. And I think therefore parents are feeling confused around that. And I think that the school system is such a huge institution in this country that parents find it hard to stay empowered in making decisions about their child's education. And there is this, I think, in our society, this idea of, well, school knows best. You know, school system must know best because it's designed for kids. But it's not been my experience. Now that my son he's only 5, so he's been in the school attached nursery setting, and now in the school setting for the first time this year. And I've been really shocked and really, I've had a lot of grief around this, actually. It's sort of how disconnected the school system feels from the needs of my child. And my child does have atypical needs. There is neurodivergence there. And so that idea of like one size doesn't fit all is really relevant to my son. And the school system is very good at one size fits all. And so there is a massive gap. But I also think kids, even who are neurotypical, or, you know, typically developing in every way, no health conditions, etc., then there's still a huge range within typical development that I don't feel is met and honoured by our school system. You know, there's an assumption that if a child is a certain age, then they will be reading at this level, doing maths at this level, able to sit still for this long, you know, all of the different things they're expected to do in school. But actually, the reality is that every single child of every single age is different from every other single child in subtle ways, perhaps, or in big ways. And I truly feel strong, and I might get on my soapbox. I really feel strongly that our school system really needs a massive shake-up to allow for meeting children with their individual needs. And like to come back to your point about kids being given control, I think, and choice, I would celebrate that in school, you know, and also, you know, to sort of pan that out to a bigger conversation around creativity. You know, our kids are having, and I think this happened for me, I don't think school helped my creativity. I think school conditioned me out of creativity. And I've worked really hard as an adult to find my reconnection with my innate creativity. And I still see that happening in schools. You know, there's less and less free play and child-directed play and child-directed creativity, and it's more do this at this time in this way with these materials, copy this artist, do this particular type of painting, you know, rather than letting kids play and be creative. And I think the school system is getting a lot wrong for our kids at the moment, and it's a worry, I think, and it's disempowering parents, as you said. Definitely.
Absolutely. And what you're saying about, like, you know, you felt disempowered as a child, you know, you weren't able to explore your own creativity. And I feel, going back to me as a teen, I mean, it was a really traumatic time anyway. But one of the things that come up for me is that I really struggled with that. And I've looked into it now, and I understand it so much better, the reasons behind it. But at that time, I thought I was doing okay. And it was later on in life, because of, like, you know, different experiences, that it took me back to being a teen in school, in art, because I had to stay in that box. I had to stay in that lane. I wasn't allowed to do anything wrong, you know. And then something like that as a child, how it impacts you later on in life, you know, because of the school system. And a lot of it is, you know, and particularly for, like, families who are experiencing, like, loads of other really difficult, you know, things going on in their lives as well. And then they send their child to go to school to be safe. Now, I'm not saying that they're not safe. I'm not saying that at all. But in their heads, because obviously we know mental health is around minds, don't we? They don't feel safe. So then all the physical symptoms come out as well with it as well, because they can't manage this environment. And it just is so sad. And a lot of the clients I get, and I'm guessing that similar for you, is around school.
Yes, so much concern around school. I'm having conversations with clients all the time around options around homeschooling or independent schools or smaller schools that can meet children more with their individual needs. It's really stressful. And I think there are just basic assumptions in our society that school is safe for all kids. And I want to really challenge that. School is safe for a lot of kids. A lot of children going to school and do feel safe, but a lot of children going to school and don't feel safe. And, I think one of the common things that I work with parents around is this idea that they're being told their child is absolutely fine in school. They're doing really well in school. They're cooperating and sitting still and ticking all the boxes and getting good grades. But then that child's coming home and there are really difficult emotional explosions happening, meltdowns happening, and parents can feel like it's my fault then, because if they're okay in school, but then they're not okay at home. And schools can really, unfortunately, often perpetuate that incorrect belief that, well, if they're fine in school, then you should just do what we're doing in school. But often what's actually happening is the child does not feel safe in school, but doesn't feel safe so much that they can't even say, I don't feel safe. When you're really not feeling safe, then you actually just have to freeze and be good and stay under the radar. And then you come home where you do feel safe, you're accepted for all of your messy feelings and all of your lack of cooperation and all of that. And then that's where that safely gets expressed. And so, I do a lot of work supporting mums around how to best support our children and how to advocate for them in the school setting and how to manage picking up the pieces for a child who doesn't feel safe in school, but the school can't recognize that. I think there's a real problem of this assumption that if a child is fine in school, then they are really emotionally healthy. I really want to challenge that idea, because actually a lot of children who sit quietly and say yes, please, and thank you, and cooperate all the time and never have any problems in school often are internalizing a lot of their difficulties. So they look fine on the outside, but are struggling emotionally on the inside. And we would see that in CAMS.
Absolutely.
And we would see it in pediatrics as well. And I think I would really love schools to be more aware of this and to not stop buying into this false idea that if they look okay on the outside, then they are fully emotionally healthy and feeling safe, because I just think that's not true in a lot of cases. In some cases it is true, but I think that's where each individual case needs to be looked at with curiosity and an awareness, like a really trauma-informed lens of how safety in our body works, and how when we are not feeling safe in our body, we will often please and appease and fawn and look cooperative in order to survive that not feeling safe. And then if people just label that as, oh, they're great, they're fine, then we don't get the help, our kids don't get the help they need. And that's a real problem, I think.
Absolutely. It's just brought to my mind as we were talking, Jenny, about one of the things, and this is conditions from, and those conditions are still there, they're going gradually but really, really slowly out there, because obviously it's different conditions on this generation. But one of the things for me was that the quiet ones are the worst. And when I unpick that now, I was very quiet. I didn't have a lot of confidence in school, and I was very quiet, and I ended up getting bullied and all that kind of stuff. But when I think about the quiet ones are the worst, and what you're saying and what I know as well, the quiet ones are actually the ones who are masking because they can't cope.
Often.
They're not feeling safe. And they're the worst is the second part, as in they go home because they feel safe and they're able to explore how they feel, and whether it's behaviours or, or using things to help them.
Yeah.
I mean, that has just it's given me goosebumps thinking about it, because obviously I've never thought about it like that before. But actually that condition is really, really powerful and really, really damaging.
Yeah. Yeah. Really damaging. Absolutely. Yeah. And I can relate to that from my school experience as well. I was very, very cooperative, good girl in school, and did very well, got good grades, sat down when I was told to sit down, stood up when I was told to stand up. And I've spent, a lot of money and a lot of time in therapy in my adulthood unpacking that good girl role that I've played, and reconnecting with my wish to say no, and reconnecting with my wish to throw a tantrum, get angry, have rage, disagree, not perform perfectly, and I think school had a big part to do with that, which I think it's not that I wouldn't say it's a primary cause, but it certainly facilitated that role developing in me of being the good girl. And I think that is happening to so many kids still these days.
Yeah, definitely. And they're a completely different generation, aren't they? They're it's almost like they've been given that allowed to show their emotions now. They're, particularly with boys and and men. So in some ways they're allowed that, but then it's pulled away, isn't it, in another way? So it just leaves a lot of confusion and that not knowing where to go and what route to take and how to behave.
Absolutely. I think we started by saying this. I think the kids these days are having a huge amount of mixed messages around what's okay and what's not okay, and whether you can be authentic or not authentic, in what settings is this okay and not okay. And I think it's a really confusing time for kids growing up.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So you said that you used to work for CAMS. Are you still connected with CAMS? Because obviously with the role that you do, I'm guessing you make like referrals to them and things.
I actually don't have any connections with CAMS. I mean, I obviously would refer through to CAMS if that was necessary, but I would typically go through a GP rather than referring directly to CAMS. And when I say I go through a GP, I direct the client through the GP. I wouldn't necessarily take over. That would be sort of up to parents, really, to have agency in that, going into that pathway. So no, I don't work with CAMS anymore. I'm entirely sort of separate in my private practice, and I do work now more specifically with meeting the emotional needs of mums and women rather than the child being the referred client. I tend very often mums will come to work with me and say, I'm also worried about my child, but very quickly we're talking about mum's anxieties and mum's worries and mum's overwhelm and mum's need for support. And so it feels quite separate from, it feels very similar to the work I did in CAMS, because I was in CAMS being told to work with children, but that didn't make as much sense to me often. Sometimes it did, but often it made sense for me to zoom out that lens and say, well, hang on, who's living with this child 24 hours a day? Who can I equip with more empowerment in this child's environment? And it was often the mums, and then it was, and in some respects that was working with mums, as I said, to support with their child's needs, so having specific conversations around their child's struggles. But very often we were quickly talking about mum's need for support. And when I and my colleagues could meet the emotional needs of mums, and I say mums, and I want to make it clear, I'm very aware that dads do a lot of hands-on parenting these days as well. And at the same time, my experience is vastly the majority of my experiences with mums, because in those child settings, it was the mums bringing the children to the appointments 9 times out of 10. So that's, in a sense, why I work with mums, because that's been my bread and butter. That's been the client group I've worked with. But I also acknowledge dads do a lot of this work as well, and absolutely need their own needs met as well. But I've certainly seen that when mums get their emotional needs met, then everyone around them benefits.
Absolutely. I can resonate with that with some of the clients I work with, that the mum almost sees herself as the rock, so everything's falling apart around her, and she's like, no, I've got to keep going,
Yes. And we have really unhelpful beliefs as mums, I think, around that. Like, I'm the one that everyone comes to for help, so I can't need help myself. If I need help myself, everything falls apart, which I can understand where those thoughts come from, but actually they're really keeping a lot of mums stuck, a lot of women stuck, because it's when we can get support. And I know this on so many levels. I only became a mum 5 years ago, but before that I was a psychologist for 10 plus years working in the NHS. And I knew that as a psychologist, we do a lot of caring for clients, a lot of mothering for clients.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew instinctively then, if I'm not okay, then I can't be the best psychologist that I need to be for my clients. So I need to have enough rest, to have enough nourishment, to have my needs met. I need to have good supervision or good therapy as well, which I did alongside my career a lot of the time, so that I could get my needs met. And that's what really helped me to break down this incorrect belief of, if you're the one giving help, you shouldn't need help. Because on the ground, I learned that the other way, that actually the more help I get as the helper, the more help I can give, and the better everyone does around me. So I'm really passionate about challenging that for mums. And I think it's perpetuated by so many societal messages, isn't it? And the shame that mothers feel. You know, we're told this is meant to be easy, instinctive. We're not meant to need help. You know, we're not meant to need a village, really. We're meant to do it all on our own. And we're meant to do it all on our own from like 2 weeks postpartum, even though we're still recovering, even though we're still reeling from the trauma of the birth, you know, in some cases. And I think there's so many unhelpful messages that keep women really silenced around what's hard and keep them believing they have to do it all on their own. And I'm just so passionate about breaking down those incorrect beliefs, because I want as many women in this world as possible to feel able to ask for help and to get emotional needs met in relationship. And that's what we need, because that's where human, you know, humans are social beings. We have our emotional needs met in relationship with other humans. And there is this really unhelpful story that that's different for mums, because we should be able to just keep giving out care and never need to receive it ourselves. It's really unhelpful. Yeah,
Definitely so. And as I say, I come across it quite a lot. But it takes me back to when I worked in the nurseries, and I think this was the kind of thought where I felt I wasn't doing enough. I felt I could make a bigger difference. And it was obviously, when you work in a nursery, your main role is working with the children.
Yeah.
But then also it come to a stage where I was working with a lot more complex situations for families. So I was doing a lot more safeguarding, you know, a lot more recording, all that kind of thing. And then the most important thing I realized then was having that relationship with the parent as well as the child, because then you get this two-way communication, don't you? And then they don't feel that they're on their own as well. And, you know, and then they felt they could trust me and open up to me.
Yeah.
And it helped my role, but I feel it also helped them as a family as well. And, you know, we could support, because there's all these different agencies in there, like services that families can have when they're struggling. And I feel that was part of the reason why counselling was maybe on the radar, but didn't really know much about it at the time. That working in nurseries, that I knew that I was meant to do more to make more of a difference. And that sounds like what you're saying as well, Jenny, that, you know, when you were in CAMS, it was very much limited of what you could do, which it is, isn't it, when we work for organisations and companies. And then when we go self-employed, it isn't limited. We can make them choices. We can make them choices, you know, we can make them decisions we want to do. Yeah. And make it work for us, what feels right and how much we want to help, and getting that balance. Do you feel that you have a balance in your life now?
I have a far better balance in my life now. I think perimenopause has certainly upset that apple cart. Well, and it's interesting because for me, I discovered I was in perimenopause. Like, I learned that word and its relevance to me when I was, I think, about 43 years old. I'm 45 now. And I had my child when I was 40, my first child and only child. And the more I learned about perimenopause, the more I looked back and thought, oh my goodness, I actually was having perimenopause experiences at 36, 37. Yeah. And so I had no idea, but I was in perimenopause and in my perinatal period and fertility period and matrescence, all of those huge developmental shifts all at the same time. And so discovering that word at 43, perimenopause, was, oh my goodness, it was so validating. It went from oh my God, my body's falling apart. I'm in total crisis all the time. I can't think straight. I'm losing my mind. I'm not cut out for mothering. Like I felt like mothering was too hard. Like it was never meant to be this hard. And I do think, especially for someone like myself who'd worked with mums for 10 years, so I felt like it shouldn't be this shocking as to how hard this is. And then when I found the word perimenopause, it all made so much more sense, that I was fighting an uphill battle every day with fluctuating hormones that I didn't know about. And I wasn't, until I knew the word, I wasn't supporting myself appropriately with good nutrition and for hormone imbalance and, circadian rhythms and things like that. And once I put that in place, then the balance got better again for me, the sort of balance of work and life. But yes, that's just like the broader context of how it's been tricky to get the balance. But certainly since working in the NHS, I have now in my private practice far more control, more creativity, and I give myself more permission to set boundaries and to create structures of working that mean my work nourishes me, as well as nourishing the client group that I serve. This was always my activism in the NHS, that while I could see I had needs, and if I got my needs met, and not just me, but my whole team, my whole NHS team, if we all got our needs met, then we can provide better care. Again, the NHS systems didn't really seem to understand that. It was more just, no, just work overtime, work through your lunch. You don't need to stop, we'll keep the referrals coming in at a rate. Keep going. Yeah, you won't have time for admin, we won't provide you admin support to help you with it. It was just, I've often said my experience with the NHS is that it really, like the NHS and also schools as well, I think teachers are real victims of this as well, school staff, of like these government funded systems that are underfunded really run on the goodwill and poor self-care of, again, in large part, the women who work within them. So the workers within these systems have to deny their needs to keep up with the needs of the system and the people it's trying to serve. And I saw from very early in my career, this isn't sustainable, and I think that's why we have so much long-term sick leave in careers like teaching and nursing and NHS roles, because carers need care, for the work to be nourishing as possible for the clients and effective and long-term sustainable. It needs to not drain the person offering it. So now in my private practice, I've been really consciously creative around developing structures and ways of working that I can do a full day's work and not feel drained by the end of it, because of the systems I've put in place. And that's based on that underlying idea of if my needs are met, everyone benefits. And I bring that into my parenting as well. And so I set boundaries in my parenting. I'll say to my son, I don't want to play today. I don't feel like playing. And he gets upset. But that's me being honest about my boundaries so that I can show up when I do feel playful, rather than burning myself out by ignoring my body's needs. And that's tricky. It's really countercultural, isn't it? It's really countercultural, but I feel really powerfully about it because I've just seen it time and time again. When a woman gets her needs met, everyone around her benefits in the longer term. If we are all getting burnt out by trying to be everything to everyone, then it's a short-term solution at best. And, there's too much burnout for women and carers. Definitely. And at the same time, that balance is always a work in progress for me. Like I said, like being a mum tipped it all about, being in perimenopause continues to tip it all about. And I have some weeks where I look at my diary and I think, I've booked in too much this week because I'm, in as part of my monthly cycle where actually my energy is really low, versus perhaps the ovulation where I've got more energy. So I don't get it perfectly right all the time. But part of that comes back to what we were first saying, is part of maintaining that balance for me is being able to let people down sometimes and say, look, I booked this podcast recording in, but actually I feel terrible, so I need to cancel it. And I don't think enough of us as women are practiced in doing that. I think we're more practiced in sucking it up and pushing on through, doing things because we've committed to them, even though we feel terrible. And then I think that's what leads us into burnout. Yeah, so it's a constant work in progress, this balance, but I'm better at it, at sort of keeping that balance, now than I was, definitely.
What I'm hearing is, and you might recognise as that therapist comment.
Yeah, I love it. What are you hearing, Sam?
Is that you've took that time to look after yourself and kind of work out what's right for you, and boundaries is so important, isn't it? And I became fully self-employed. Well, I left in this, so there's a little bit of confusion here. So I left the role as a school counsellor in July. That was my official leaving date. But because of the school holidays, it didn't really kick in with me because I was buzzy. I mean, I have this high buzz energy anyway, which you're aware of, around my creativity and who I am and just loving life. So I was up here for so long. So there was the question of my own boundaries in some way, you know what I mean? Just loving life. I was a child. I was just skipping around, and I've left my job. And, after 32 years as well, it felt big, but I didn't see it as big. And like one of my friends, that's big. I'm like, no, it's not. Just keep going. Yeah. And it was middle of September that it kicked in. It was like, oh, what have I done? Oh my gosh, what have I done? Have I made it? And then all the what ifs came, and the negative thoughts came, and I questioned if I'd made a mistake, like we do. Yeah. And that was because I just kind of not give myself time, which you have, give myself time to grieve the loss. Because it's a loss, isn't it? And what you're saying about going into perimenopause, that's a loss in some ways. You have to have that time to grieve, don't you? Yeah. But as women, we don't feel that we need that. I mean, if you think of bereavement, some people, not always women, sometimes men, they don't give themselves that time. And I see that with my clients. They're following what their families are doing, so they're not giving themselves time. And this is usually with young people who just don't know how to deal with it. But giving ourselves time is so important. And I've probably experienced burnout myself on more than one occasion, and not what it was at the time. But now I can kind of sit back and go, yeah, this feels good, or I'm not doing that. And I'm learning to say no. Yeah. So I'm kind of at the beginning of that journey. And I do, just to top up, I have one day in school now, and it feels really weird. The rest of the week, I'm like creating my own boundaries and things. So that's where the confusion is for me. But I do it because I want to, and it feels right, and loads of other reasons. So absolutely. I feel like I went off on a bit of a tangent then.
No, not at all. I think it's really relevant, and I want to share that, like, while I feel like I'm better at managing this balance, and it's interesting, I'm doing this when I talk about balance. I'm not doing this like it's perfectly balanced. It's like when you balance on something, you're moving constantly all the time, trying to and that's what it's like constant adjustments. And while I'm better at doing that these days, it comes from lived experience of two different types of burnout, one through NHS work and one through parenting. I burnt out when my son was 3, and this was around the time I learned that I was in perimenopause, and then that created that lens of understanding. And I also think you're talking about grief. My goodness, grief is so important, and as a society we don't value allowing time for grief. We more value pushing grief down and getting back to productivity, and then it comes out sideways, it comes out later, it comes out in ways that we don't often recognize as burnout or grief, or and I think we need far more emotional literacy in our world, in our societies, where grief is acknowledged, and especially that grief that's not just about a bereavement. I think of all the different types of grief. If someone has a bereavement, if a loved one dies, then there is a little bit more understanding around the need for grief. But things like grieving because you're in perimenopause, that's not really well understood. Or grieving because you've left a job when you've chosen to leave a job, that's not really well understood. But these are significant losses in our life that impact us and do cause grief. And I think we absolutely need time to process that. And our society doesn't help us do that. So it can often take a long time. And then I actually love that you've gone back one day a week. And that's that creative angle, isn't it? Of like, creativity is just remembering you always have options, and that you can go forwards and go backwards and, you know, change it up and switch it around all the time. That's what creativity is for me. Like when I think about creativity, I don't necessarily think about drawing or painting. I'm doing a lot more writing these days, which I'm loving, and that does feel very creative. But most of the time it's about that creative remembering that there are always creative options in this like balancing act. And like if I've taken something out and it doesn't feel right, I can put it back in, you know, or I can put less of it back in. And I'm like, boundaries are really important, but a huge part of my boundaries, like bringing this balance, is that I sort of change them often. I sort of play with boundaries and then go, well, that didn't work, so that needs to be more flexible or less flexible. And, you know, forever playing creatively with boundaries, with self-care, you know, with how I'm working, when I'm working, you know, all of it. Parenting, I'm playing all the time. And that is a real fundamental, like, what's the word, like a foundation to my wellness, I think, is that creative, well, I'll just try something different, you know. It's really important.
Absolutely. So I'm picking up that you've used the two words that mean like that a part of my world all the time is play and creativity. And before we move on to like the last part, they are two really important factors of keeping ourselves healthy and safe and connected in whatever way, but also realizing that it doesn't matter what age you are, you can play and be creative within your life.
100%. And again, our society doesn't value those two things.
We'll make it happen, Jenny.
But yeah, exactly. Well, I'm fighting like you to make it more recognized. Absolutely. But again, I think school sort of conditions us out of play early, and it conditions us out of creativity early. And then, you know, like people like me spend a lot of time and money in therapy trying to get it back, you know, because this is our natural way of being. To be creative, to be playful, that is our natural human nature. And if we deny it, then we're not healthy and well. And so it's absolutely fundamental to wellness. I totally agree.
Absolutely. And I've got Care Bear sat here, and this isn't a resource. This is mine, and I'm 55. I
love it.
So
beautiful.
There you go.
Absolutely. That playfulness is so important.
Of course. It has made a big difference to my life. So thank you for that, Jenny. A really powerful conversation I feel that we've had this morning. There's just so many points that I feel that is going to be helpful for so many people who watch or listen to this episode. So we've come to the part where I ask you for your 3 tips.
Oh, yes. I'd forgotten this because it was so long ago that we arranged to speak. My 3 tips. Is there more that you need? 3 tips for what specifically? Can you?
So what I tend to say is it's your choice who these 3 tips would be for. I mean, you're a mum. You know, you're a therapist, you work with mums mainly. So I guess it's what feels right for you. What do you feel people would benefit from the most?
Yeah. Okay. So I think my number 1 tip is self-compassion. And I say self-compassion specifically in reference to the Kristin Neff model of self-compassion. And she talks about self-compassion. She's done a lot of research that's really science-based, which I love. Like, I think sometimes compassion and self-compassion get talked about in these very airy-fairy ways, and people just think it's a little bit of fluff that's not really important. But this is science-backed. This will help your health, overall health and well-being, and the overall health and well-being of your family is backed by science. And she talks about self-compassion being composed of 3 different things. So mindfulness, like just checking in with yourself, how am I feeling now? And then also common humanity. So this concept of, like, so many of us, particularly as women, well, no, I think this is true for men as well, that we feel that we are the only ones that are suffering like this, and it's our fault. If we're having a hard day, it's because we've done something wrong. And the idea of common humanity is that actually remembering, even if you can just tell yourself, this is hard because I'm human, and all humans would find this hard. Like, that is such a huge part of my self-compassion practice, to remember that I am human, and I'm not alone in this struggle. Yeah. If I'm finding something hard, other people are finding this hard, and that brings so much relief to my nervous system, I think, to know that it's not just me. And then the third aspect of self-compassion is, from Kristin Neff, is self-kindness, which is talking to yourself in a really kind way, like interrupting those critical thoughts and bringing very consciously kind thoughts to yourself, or speaking to yourself out loud in kind ways, like you would do to a friend. Like, most of us would never dream of talking to a friend in the way that we talk critically to ourselves when we're struggling. And so it's a reminder that if we can talk kindly to ourselves, we're bringing ourselves more compassion, which is settling our nervous system and makes us feel more competent and more able to face the challenges that we're facing. So, I mean, that's like 3 things, isn't it? So maybe they're my 3 things.
I can go with that.
Yeah, under the umbrella of self-compassion. But those 3 things I use all day, every day. And if I'll just add that I learned about this self-compassion model through my shame resilience practice, which is teachings from Brené Brown. And, she's written a lot of books like Daring Greatly, Rising Strong, which people love. And within there, she talks about a shame resilience practice. And I actually went over to America in 2019 to train with Brené's company on how to, A, use this model in my life every single day, and B, how to coach others in using this model. And this is how I found out about self-compassion. So it's part of shame resilience. And I would say that shame resilience has been life-changing for me in terms of my wellness, in terms of my self-compassion, in terms of my ability. Sam, I don't think I'd be here talking to you right now if not for my shame resilience practice. I don't think I'd be in private practice, because shame is the voice that tells us we're not good enough. We're never good enough, no matter how hard we try. Who do we think we are? And why would anyone want to hear you speak? Why would anyone want to come and see you in private practice? You don't have what it takes to build a private practice, or, whatever we're trying to do. Shame is the voice that will come and tell us, don't do that. Stay small, stay quiet. You're not good enough. Other people, it might be okay for other people, but not you. And so the resilience that teaching has brought to my shame means I can feel all that shame, because we never don't feel it. We all feel it all the time. But then I have tools where I can meet that shame, and it doesn't stop me from going towards what I really value, like building a work and career that nourishes me, or coming on to this podcast and speaking about what I feel passionate about, even though, I've had thoughts of, oh my goodness, who really wants to hear from me? Like, why would anyone want to hear from me? I don't know enough. I'm not professional enough. I'm not, educated enough. And I mean, when I say it out loud, it's crazy. I've got a lot of education, to get where I am. But that's how shame operates. It does not matter. It's never enough. It does not matter how much you strive. Shame will always tell you it's not enough. So that's my 2 big things with the 3 aspects of self-compassion as well.
Thank you so much. So where can people find you, Jenny?
So I'm most active on Instagram, and my handle there is Dr. Jenny Psychologist. I also have a newsletter that I'd love to say goes out weekly, but it doesn't. It goes out when I have a chance in my busy life. And I'm getting better at it being more frequent, but that's through Substack. So the way to find that would be, I believe, mindbodysoulpsychology.substack.com. And all those links through my Instagram as well. I have a website that talks a lot more about the therapy that I offer. That's mindbodysoulpsychology.co.uk.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, thank you so much. I'll make sure they're all in the notes, in the show notes, so then when people want to contact you, they know where to find you. And also your 3 really, really valuable tips as well. Definitely. So we just about come to the end of, I nearly said the session. Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm in my own therapy room today. Don't know why, but there you go.
Oh, it tends to get deep when I talk.
Feel relaxed, Jenny, to go, yeah, it's okay. I'm the therapist today.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's what I bring to conversations, though. I don't do small talk. I get deep really quickly, and I love it. So yeah, it does feel a bit like a session.
Honestly, I've really enjoyed talking to you, and I feel that because it's been quite a while to get to this space, it's almost like I feel more confident because I've been doing this quite a while.
Yeah, that's true.
Quite a while. You've obviously had that time to like focus on yourself. So we've both come quite passionate and not really have that clarity about each other's conversations. So I feel that it's been, brilliant. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Sam. It's been such a pleasure. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you, everybody who has watched or listened to this amazing podcast with Jenny, Dr. Jenny, psychologist today. You will be able to find that soon on Spotify, and I also do YouTube as well. So that is the end of today. It's just been absolutely amazing. My head is buzzing like I don't know what, just because of the conversation we've had. I will be back with another episode soon, but for today, I'll see you later. Bye.